Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I'm kind of talking a little bit out of my league, but kind of not because it's all part of everything I kind of do here. So, we are approaching ever so slowly and ever so closer to Transformers 8, which is going to be Transformers in G.I. Joe. So, this is what I'm kind of working on here a little bit today. Um, you know, Hasbro has already given us a couple. Um, Crossover toys. So we have Megatron. We already have Soundwave as a crossover, as well as Bumblebee. Now, um, we're getting closer to doing a movie. My thoughts, my ideas, and how I think this could very awesomely go here is, you know, we've seen in the past in some of the comic books. I know I've grabbed a couple of them. I don't think I grabbed all of them, but where Cobra has actually managed to get their hands on a crashed Decepticon ship, and then they tried turning Decepticons into vehicles that they could then ride and use. And I know that there were some issues that they had brought up in the comic book where some of the vehicles would kind of inadvertently delete some unsuspecting pilots. Um, I think the best way to really go about doing all of this is, we can have the Transformers as the Transformers. Whether you want to bring Megatron in as a his tank, um, because that would be a great call out to what they've already done. And likewise, we could have um, Soundwave become the Dreadnought Thunder Machine, um, and you could have Bumblebee become really what should have been Beachcomber, because the Doom buggy that they had really would have fit for Beachcomber more so than Bumblebee, but you could do it. Um, but here's some of the other ideas. In the past, Hasbro has come out with um, kind of mech suits of their own for GI Joe. If we're going to take GI Joe and we're going to put it into this universe, I think the best way to do it, and I'm going to say update it a little bit, but it's not really updating it all that much, really. Um, the Cobra Fang helicopter worked really well. Um, but when you really look at the size, it's not using much in it doesn't have a big fuel tank or anything else. Likewise, when you look at the GI Joe Skyhawk, wonderful craft. I love the design. I know it's been kind of updated a little here and a little there, but again, it's something that looks like it would probably hold 5 gallons worth of gas and maybe get you about I don't know 300 yards, because it's going to use a lot of fuel up. Um, how do you really bring all this into here? I think what we should look at is, first of all, kind of taking from, say, like what Robotech did. Okay, so we have these big robots that are lumbering around and everything else. We know they exist. The military knows they exist. Foreign governments know they exist because maybe they've shown up here and there. But now we bring mankind into the realm of, we are now creating our own mecha, kind of like a BattleTech, a Robotech, or shoot, I'm trying to think what was the last big mecha show movie that they had done, and I can't think of it offhand. And I know they did two of them. The second one, John Boyega was in, but you get the idea. Uh, we are now creating mechas so we can go up against, say, Decepticons or whatever else. Likewise, with Cobra, I think it would be very, very interesting if you had maybe the Hiss tanks that we all know and love, the old traditional Hiss tanks, and then in some of their newer style Hiss tanks or whatever, you could have a line of those as essentially Decepticon drone tanks that would just be a constant thorn in everybody's side, or some other drone vehicles or whatever that they could throw out. Um, Those are the ideas when I'm looking at Transformers as a role playing game. Okay, I know they came out with one, and I've done a review on it, and it's using Renegade Studios D20 or take on D20, which I did not give it the most favorable view of it, mainly because of the damage. I to me it seems like the game was more role, as in you take the role of the character, and less about running through an adventure and doing damage and all that stuff. Kind of like an action game. It's more of a sit down kind of drama game in that regard. But that's my take on it. That's my own personal view. But I've been doing more action type role playing games for many years. So I realize I may be more on the fringe side now than I ever was way back then, or maybe I always was on the fringe. But either way, you could take this idea and we could have the drones coming in, and that's what everybody's fighting against. GI Joe being a worldwide type Delta Force unit, having presence worldwide. I think it would work very well, and they're using Energon to really power their vehicles. So they need some of the same energy, which Earth has plenty of. That was one of the reasons why the Autobots and Decepticons had come to Earth besides crash landing. There is an abundance of ways to get Energon for them. So having that ability that we can then put into our military vehicles and all that, and we are not reliant upon just pure oil or anything else. We can use it from doing. Yeah, I think in the shows you could have done it from. I know that they did it from water turbines, as well as doing it from. They did use oil. I think you could do it from solar or whatever. I think Energon as a just generic source could be done almost from anything. And honestly, it was more of just a food thing, a little here and a little there. It did get shown as a food in the original. It also got shown as a power source to use on weapon systems and stuff like that, just directly. Um, but I think the ability that we have on Earth to create the energon that was so enticing for the Decepticons would be a very big tool to say, all of our science fiction fantasy creations here, doing different mechas, stuff like that. Even if you just said, hey, Cobra has one type, GI Joe has another type, whatever, or the suits like what we had in Rise of the Beasts, something like that. I think that would be a very unique, that have that actor come in and have that suit, because that was pretty much endowed to him from um, shoot. Now I'm trying to think of the Autobot's name, and I'm sure everybody's yelling at the screen for this. Um, but anyways, being a special suit endowed to him by that Autobot, that would be his unique suit. For everyone else, it's human technology incorporated with a Cybertronian technology to come up with the mechas that we would pilot. It may have a semi self aware AI to help us correct, which I think would be kind of nice and neat. Um, in the sense of like how BattleTech is, you just kind of put on a helmet and then it links you with the mecha, and it has a self-aware AI to help keep everything upright and help do what the pilot is needing it to do. It's more directed by the pilot. It is not really self evident that it will take care of itself in that way. Unless they do go in that direction, it'll kind of pilot itself on an autopilot, but not as good as a human pilot would do. Maybe something like that. A more crude type, non-transforming robot in that regard. But I think that would be a very good way to really bring this all in. Again, it's something we're trying to do in the shadows. Um, you're running in. The Decepticons are doing what they're going to do. They don't care. But the Autobots, GI Joe. Um, they're trying to fight all this stuff in the shadows, keep collateral damage to a minimum. I think that would be a very good way to cross over everything. You can get all of your nice iconic vehicles in here. We can have the Vamp. We could bring in, um, like I said before, the Skyhawk. Um, if you wanted to bring in the Sky Striker as the old F-14, or if you wanted to update that to now it's the F-22 Raptor or something in that regard, that would be kind of up to everybody in the whole decision making thing. I hear that Steven Spielberg's going to be an executive producer. It's all up to them. I don't know where you would want to go on some of that stuff, but you still have some very iconic machines that we could use. We could finally bring to the screen. You know, um, I'm thinking the helicopter, and I'm failing at names here. This is because I just kind of watched the video, and I wanted to come down here while it's all in my head, thinking about this. Unfortunately, to me, vehicle names are kind of lacking here. And if you give me a second, um, nope, that wouldn't work because I don't know where I have that sheet. Um, I know I have a whole bunch of vehicles, and I have done those all up in like a D6. So maybe I could do a D6 version of GI Joe. Um, Actually, maybe I could. So um, here we are. So I've done all these in the D6, so we can kind of go through. I mean, the ASP would work very well now, um, because now you're trying to figure out how are you going to power this. And in the cartoon, all this stuff was being done with lasers. So here we are, twin laser cannons and stuff like that. We have the claw. Um, the Rattler, you might want to do maybe some of those as drones, or maybe that's where what Starscream and all them would turn into. I don't know. Cobra water moccasin. I mean, a lot of this stuff, hovercraft. I always wondered why we didn't do more with the hovercraft. Well, unfortunately, you don't really get the best mileage on these, so unfortunately, they don't work out as good. But there again, if we had an energon as our fuel source, maybe that's a bigger possibility. Now, stuff that would not have been as economically feasible. You know, how are we going to power this thing to go as far as we ever did in say GI Joe? Now we can do that. Um, let's see here again. Now we got the shark, our Skyhawk here. When you look at the Skyhawk, like I said, where are you really putting a lot of the fuel? I mean, they would fly in these things for quite a long time. So now we can, you know, you could probably really pull that off. Um, you got your Stinger, as well as the Vamp. That's the Vamp Mark II because it's got the missiles. The Mark One has got the machine guns. Here, the flat cannon. Uh, our Hall heavy artillery laser. How are we powering all this stuff? Again, now it could all be said it's being powered by Energon. Um, let's see. I mean, the Fang, like I said, I mean, it's a small aircraft, a small helicopter, very easily done. The only thing is you don't have a huge uh, gas tank in there, so doing some of the things that they did may not work. But if you're using Energon, you can. That's your MacGuffin, and that's what fuels it, and you can go for a long time. Um, let's see here. I know getting closer here. I had done these by year, so as I'm going through, this stuff was by the year it came out. So I was going year by year on one of the GI Joe resources. Here, the Armadillo. There again, being four laser cannons. I mean, that thing is very small, powered by Energon. Everything works. You explain it away that it doesn't need fuel like a traditional, and maybe Energon lasts quite a while. Um, let's see here. we're getting closer. You know, we could bring in all these old vehicles and we can explain how we power them. And again, the USS Flag could be an Energon powered aircraft carrier, the only one of its type or something. The flight pods, again, powered by Energon. Now it explains why it can go as far as it does. I think the possibility of bringing a lot of this stuff in and saying we can now do this because we've unlocked the secret of how to power this with Energon, and we can now really properly do this and do it justice. Um, Here again, we had the fire bat. The fire bat was very iconic. They did that I don't know how many different times. Here we are at the Tomahawk. Um, Beautiful helicopter. I always loved this in the show, and here we are. Now we could probably fully pull this off. Um, if you have the right people behind this, they're saying that Steven Spielberg and Michael Bay are going to be executive producers. Michael Bay has a lot of ties to the military. From my understanding, I think he is Steven Spielberg's nephew or son-in-law, however it works out. But they are somewhat related by marriage somewhere in there. The beautiful thing is with his background, I think we could probably work some of this stuff out, even if it's just done CGI. You have two executive producers that have good knowledge on how to pull this all off. The things that they were able to do with the old original Transformers live action movies, now we're all out of. I left these all open for doing more craft that I didn't get to. Um, you know, Great people that have a good knowledge. Now, I have my reservations with Michael Bay. I think he puts too much time and emphasis into the big explosions and all that stuff. As a writer, I don't think he's quite there, but that's my personal view. He's good for a single movie, but trying to do a long arc, which I'm not going to say I'm the greatest at either. I know people will make huge comments about even George Lucas to say, when you look at episode 1, 2, and 3, people didn't like him as much compared to 4, 5, and 6. And even going into the background of all that, he didn't even think he was going to get 5 and 6. So he had really crammed everything into what we now call A New Hope, episode 4. And then when he got a green light to be able to do the others, and he was kind of doing it on his own or whatever, he had to kind of fly by wire and come up with Yoda because we already killed off Obi-Wan and you do other things. And he has a very, very good imagination. Steven Spielberg being a very good friend of his, I'm sure he could tap George on the shoulder and say, "Hey, George, what do you think about this?" Or "What do you think about that?" Great circles to be in. Um, Great people to really just pick away at their mind and how would you do this and how could you do that. I think it really comes down to, there is a great potential here. We will have to see what they do. This is just my wild take on all this. And as you've heard in the past, I would love to mash a lot of different universes together. I'd love to have a Star Wars and Star Trek, and maybe like a BattleTech all mashed together. And I'm starting to think with my, I haven't really touched on this in a little while, but um, my little Star Trek or whatever with my main character being Charles. I'm thinking I might go in that direction. I might just do what I keep thinking about. Hey, let's just mash it all up because I can look at Starfleet vessels and the Klingon vessels, and those would very easily still transfer over to being in Star Wars. The engines and everything else all work perfectly fine, beautiful designs, change nothing on any of that stuff. All I have to do is just either say one's a warp and one's a hyperdrive, or go back and forth. It all works really well. Even throwing a BattleTech type group in there, it still works very well. Um, no one has ever said one way is the only way. So uh, we have ion engines even introduced in the original series, so there's that thrown out there that that's a very big possibility. Maybe they just haven't met each other yet. So with all that being said, and all the little rant that I'm on, and hopes and dreams that maybe these are things that we could do, I think we have a very good possibility of doing all this. Um, I think the great potential is there. How do we pull it off? Really, how does Hollywood pull this off? I don't know. These are my thoughts. You know, I'm a small channel. Probably nobody will ever really see this. It would be wonderful if somebody did and says, that is a good way of taking it, and maybe they could. Um, it'd be wonderful, but it is what it is. But with that being said, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next.